Assalamualaikum. I'm trying to understand, since Islam came as conversion, the fundamentals are the same, either from 700 years ago or now. So can you tell us a diagnosis? Why is there a difference either from either psyche or either pedagogy that makes us different? Why now that we find that Islamization Arabization is much better because we follow the Sunnah or whatever, and for people the 700 years ago, it's it's okay to be, but I would think the fundamentals are the same. People who bring it are Arab created. So if you can help us enlighten what's different that makes them people from the past really accept them as part of the local culture. Today we have more overzealous towards the nothing wrong with Arab culture, but this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first, another important aspect of this factual proposition is the identity which is established in the historical fact and fiction of the people who brought Islam here. They were people who came directly from the household of the Prophet. Yes, they were the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet, from the line of Sayyidina Ali through Sayyidina Hussein, and particularly directly from Hadramaut, Southern Arabia. These people, their understanding of Islam, shall we say, became formalized, although before that it has already been matured and experienced by them. It became formalized into a Tareqah in the 11th or 10th century with the coming of Al-Faqih Al-Muqaddam. This man, Al-Faqih Al-Muqaddam, is the progenitor of the Sayyids that we see today. And he combined within himself two silsilas or two chains to the Prophet. One coming directly from his fathers and forefathers, and the other through the route of Sheikh Abu Madian. And from Sheikh Abu Madian to Imam Al-Ghazali, then to Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jalani, to Imam Al-Ghazali, to Junaid Al-Baghdadi. So the people who brought Islam here were people who were comfortable with all the three dimensions of Islam. The legal aspects in terms of the Shafi'i fiqh, the theological aspect in the Ash'ari theology. And Ash'ari theologies, when it was developed in this part of the world, had already underwent much development in history. It was already a very abstract notion of reality and truth. These were men of science when they came here. I mean, in 1590 alone, with that work, the Aqaid al-Nasafi, they already had a physical theory of atomism. Yes? Meaning to say their conception of the world was already an atomistic conception, which is not bound by legalism. Meaning to say the conception of the world, let's just say. And if they were able to understand the world in abstract terms, and their conception of the human self was also highly abstract, that means also they were very universal human beings. But yet, because of their metaphysical element, the tasawwuf aspect, their ethical metaphysical elements, that also made them understand the notion of the ayatillah. Everything in this world are of the signs of God. So therefore, every sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is of value, isn't it? Supposing if you look at as in Surah Al-Furqan, wa ibadur rahman alladhina yamshuna fil ardi hawnan. And the worshippers of the All-Merciful, when they walk on earth, they walk humbly. Why do they do that? Because in the world, they perceive the signs of God. When they see the tree, the forest, when they see the river, every single stone, they see in this reflections of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creative activity. And when they see human cultures, languages, they want to preserve as much as possible the way they want to preserve the diversity of the species. Because these all reflect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creative activity. Yes? That's why some of them, for example, due to the polished nature of their hearts, when they look at the birds, yes, they know that the birds are making tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And any tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves the happiness in the human world. So therefore they would be champions of biodiversity also. If they are champions of biodiversity, they would also be champions of the multiplicity of cultures and languages. They want to preserve the multiplicity of tongues in existence also. That's why they wrote poetry. That's why they wrote syair. That's why they wrote the gurindams, and they developed the Malay language to such heights. That's why they wrote history, in order to preserve Islam in the Malay tongue. That's why they developed the family of Islamic languages. These are mark of refined human beings. Men of adab, shall we say, because adab also means literature. So men of adab are people who love beauty, because beauty is a reflection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, His creative activity. But supposing if something has happened to the conception of knowledge, meaning supposing what has happened is the restriction of the keyword, which is knowledge, now you reduce it only to just matters of halal and haram. If that's the only category that you know, then the world will lose a lot of its color, isn't it? Even in Imam Al-Ghazali's Ihya, when you look at the book of Tafakkur, for example, it's amazing. You think that it's a book on ethics, it's a book on tasawwuf, but the book of contemplation there, Imam Al-Ghazali was saying, Tafakkur, one of its elements, includes making tafakkur of this external world, including the physical nature. These are all elements of tafakkur. And he was describing the difference between shukr, gratitude of God, and tafakkur. He said shukr involves contemplation, but shukr involves contemplation of God's ni'mah, meaning to say God's blessing, that produces and induces inside you the feeling of thankfulness. And therefore, you do accordingly as a result of your feeling of thankfulness. Tafakkur, on the other hand, is contemplation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatness, that induces in you the feeling of God's greatness. So this was how religion was understood. Meaning to say, religion was not restricted to just that aspect. So one of the reasons perhaps is the restriction of religion to that element. And two, it has something to do with education. Because in the past, the most talented people, how were they educated? The geniuses, how were they educated? Ibn Sina, how was he educated? Al-Farabi, how was he educated? These were all educated first through the memorization of the verses in the Quran, isn't it? After they have memorized the Quran, memorized the ahadith, and then memorized several mutun, or several key texts. Only in the later periods in their life did they go into the sciences. So their worldview is already based on the Quranic worldview. Yes, with all its beauties. But on the other hand, and these were the most talented of people. In our local landscape of a tragedy today, we have, of course, several very talented people who goes into Islamic studies. But not all, isn't it? Who is dominating the discourse of Islamic thought? Who is dominating the discourse of the religious sciences? Then you will know why they are Arabizing. If we have people of talent who, if we can replenish this system of education, of bringing back the memorization of the Quran, not parroting, but with understanding, and with the several of the sciences being put in place. Why our scholars in the past wrote classifications of knowledge was in order that you understand the importance of the fardu ain and the fardu kifayah, and this because it wants to promote you to the possibility of being to achieve what is called takamul ma'rifi, according to Ibn Khaldun, meaning to say perfection or completion in terms of knowledge. You become a universalist, you become a generalist, in the sense that you can appreciate other people's expertise also. But now we are designed to become very, blinkered specialists. You become just an expert on one aspect of one aspect of one aspect, and as a result, you cannot experience anything in the totality, in the gestalt, in the what is it as a culture. So these are some of the things that needs to be back be brought back in terms of the psyche. So religion needs to be taught both in the legal aspects, in the theological aspects, but also in the ihsan aspect. And then you have to that's why Prof. Al-Attas was saying that for scholars, at least, the study of history the study of Islam and its role in world history would be fardu ain for them, for scholars. Why is that? Because studying Islam as world history, studying what Islam has done for the world, will make them understand what Islam is as a force of civilizations. And Islam has been Islamic civilization has experimented with more types of governments than any other civilization. It has experimented and it has successfully been the driving force of various cultures, various languages, various forms. And these things is knowledge that is important for the faqih in our time. Because he must know this, yes, in order that he doesn't become too restrictive, for example. Yes, so that's my long, short answer.